Do you know this feeling? You are sitting in a meeting. You are a talented engineer. In your home country, you were a leader. You were the person with all the answers. But here, in this room, you are silent. Your boss asks a question. You have a great idea, a perfect solution. But your heart starts beating fast. Your hands are cold. You think, what if my English is wrong? What if they laugh at my accent? While you are waiting, a younger colleague speaks. His idea is not better than yours. Actually, it is a bad idea. But he speaks with confidence. The boss smiles, the team agrees. And you? You stay in the shadows. Again. They think you are not smart because you are quiet. They think you don't understand because you don't speak. Is this why you moved to a new country? To become a ghost? To lose your identity. If you continue to be silent, nothing will change. The promotion will go to someone else. The respect will go to someone else. You will stay stuck in this chair, feeling small, day after day. The silence is not protecting you. The silence is killing your career. But listen to me. Your value is not your grammar. Your brain is brilliant. Your experience is powerful. In this video today, we will find your voice again. I will show you that you don't need perfect English to be a great engineer. You only need the courage to start. Let's break the silence together. Before we start the story, I want to give you 5 keys. These are not just English words. These are keys to open your prison. The first key is expertise. E-X-P-E-R-T-I-S-E. Expertise means your knowledge, your skills as an engineer. Your expertise is the same in any country. The bridge you build in your home country uses the same math as the bridge here. English is just a tool. Do not let a small tool hide your big expertise. The second key is barrière. B-A-R-R-I-E-R. A barrier is a wall. Language is a barrier now. But remember, a barrier is not a destination. It is something you walk through. You can break a wall piece by piece. 1 sentence today, 2 sentences tomorrow. The third key is assertive. A-S-S-E-R-T-I-V-E. Being assertive is not being loud. It is being clear. It means saying, I have an idea, please listen. You don't need perfect grammar to be assertive. You only need to stand tall. The fourth key is valued. V-A-L-U-E-D. To be valued means to be important. Right now, you feel invisible. But your team needs you. They need your brain. You are a valued member of the project. Believe this first. The fifth key is resilience. R-E-S-I-L-I-E-N-C-E. Resilience is the power to continue. When you say a wrong word and people look at you. When you make a mistake in a meeting. You don't stop. You breathe, you smile, you continue. That is resilience. These 5 words are your weapons today. Keep them in your mind as we listen to the story of Marco. The fluorescent lights in a large office hummed quietly, a sound Marco had grown to hate. He sat at his desk, staring at a small, framed photograph. In the photo, Marco was standing in front of a massive concrete bridge in his home country. He was wearing a white hard hat. His face was tanned from the sun, and his eyes were bright with pride. That day, he was a chief engineer. He was the man who made the impossible possible. When he spoke, people moved. When he drew a line on a blueprint, a city changed. Marco remembered the smell of the river and the sound of the workers shouting his name with respect. Engineer Marco, we need your decision. He loved his job because it was not just about steel and stone, it was about connection. He wanted to build things that would last for 100 years. He wanted his children to walk across his bridges and say, my father built this. He is a great man. This was his dream. It was a big, beautiful dream that carried him across the ocean to this new country. He didn't move because he was poor. He moved because he wanted to be the best in the world. He wanted to work with the best technology and the biggest companies. He believed that engineering was a universal language. He believed that math was the same in every corner of the earth. He thought, if I can build a bridge there, I can build a bridge anywhere. In his mind, the future was clear. He saw himself leading meetings in English. He saw himself standing on top of new skyscrapers in the city. He imagined his wife smiling when he came home with a promotion. He wanted to prove that a man from a small town could succeed in a giant world. He wanted to be more than just a survivor. He wanted to be a leader again. He wanted to feel that old fire in his heart, the fire of creation, the fire of being valued. Every morning, when Marco walked into this office, he closed his eyes for a second. He whispered to himself, "Today is the day. Today I will show them who I am. Today I will speak. Today I will contribute." He arrived early, he stayed late, he studied the projects with more detail than anyone else. He had the hunger, he had the passion, he had 20 years of expertise locked inside his brain, waiting to be released. He didn't just want a paycheck, he wanted his identity back. He wanted to be the man in the photograph again. But a dream is a fragile thing. A dream needs a voice to live, and Marco's voice was disappearing. As the clock ticked toward 9 a.m., the office door opened and the reality of his new life walked in. The fire in his heart started to flicker because he knew that in this room he was no longer the man in the photograph. He was just a man who couldn't find the right words. The morning meeting began at 9:05 a.m. Around a large glass table, 10 engineers sat with their coffee. Marco sat at the far end. He had his notebook open. He had his pen ready. He had spent 5 hours the previous night studying the blueprints for the West Side Bridge. He knew every bolt. He knew every cubic meter of concrete. As the senior engineers talked, their words moved fast. Too fast. It was like a river of sound. Marco could not catch. He understood the technical words, tensile strength, load bearing, seismic activity, but the small words, the jokes, the fast transitions, those were like a fog. He felt like he was watching a movie with no subtitles. The main problem was the foundation. Marco saw a dangerous error in the calculations. If they used the current design, the bridge would crack. In less than 10 years, the soil was too soft for such a heavy structure. He needed to tell them. He opened his mouth, but his brain froze. A wall rose up in front of him, the invisible wall of the English language. He started translating in his head. The soil, the ground, it is not hard. It is like... How do you say loon in English? While he searched for the word subsidence, the conversation moved on. The engineers were already talking about the budget. Marco felt a cold sweat on his neck. He looked around the room. Did they see him? Did they know he was struggling? He saw a young intern, a boy, only 22 years old, talking and laughing. The intern's English was perfect. His ideas were simple, even a bit wrong, but he spoke with so much energy. The boss was listening to the intern. The boss was not looking at Marco. Marco looked down at his hands. His hands were strong. They were the hands of an expert. But in this room, he felt like a child who had lost his mother in a crowd. He felt a deep sense of injustice. Why did he have to be less than just because of his accent? Why did his 20 years of experience disappear? Because he couldn't find a verb. Every time he wanted to speak, a voice in his head whispered, "Don't do it. You will sound stupid. They will look at you with pity. They will wait for you to finish, but they won't really listen. Just stay quiet. Do your work, go home." The silence was safe, but it was a prison. The Raucan was not just the language, it was the fear of being seen as unprofessional. He was a lion who had forgotten how to roar. He was a master of steel who was being defeated by simple air. As the meeting ended, Marco watched the others leave. They were talking about their weekend plans. No one asked Marco for his opinion. No one noticed the genius sitting at the end of the table. The invisible wall was now a mountain, and Marco was standing at the bottom, feeling very, very small. But a mountain is not just an obstacle. A mountain is also a place where a villain waits to test your soul. And for Marco, the villain was not the language. The villain was about to speak with a very loud, confident voice. The villain in Marco's story did not wear a mask. He wore an expensive, tailored suit and a perfect smile. His name was Steve. Steve was 30 years younger than Marco. He had never built a bridge in a storm. He had never seen concrete crack under pressure. But Steve had one thing that Marco did not have, a silver tongue. Steve was the golden boy of the office. He was born in the city. English was his playground. In every meeting, Steve did not just talk, he performed. He used big, shiny words like innovation, synergy, and optimization. To the boss, Mr. Anderson, Steve sounded like the future. But to Marco, Steve sounded like a dangerous amateur. One afternoon, Marco was sitting in the break room, drinking his black coffee. Steve walked in, smelling of expensive cologne and confidence. He looked at Marco with a look that was not hate, but something worse, pity. "Hey, Marco," Steve said, leaning against the counter. "I saw you in the meeting today. You looked a bit lost." "Don't worry, buddy. This project is moving fast. Maybe you should just focus on the data entry? Let me handle the presentations. I don't want you to feel embarrassed." Each word from Steve was like a small knife. Embarrassed. Lost. Data entry. Marco's hands shook. He wanted to say, "I was building bridges when you were in kindergarten. I know the physics of this earth better than you know your own name." But the words stayed locked in his chest. He only nodded and looked at his coffee. Steve laughed, a loud, empty sound. "Good man, we need people to do the quiet work too. Not everyone is born to be a leader, right?" Steve walked out, leaving a cloud of perfume and arrogance behind. Marco felt a cold anger rising. The villain was not just Steve. The villain was the system that valued how you say it more than what you know. The villain was the mirror that told Marco he was a failure. Steve was the voice of Marco's deepest fear, that he was now useless, that his expertise meant nothing in this new language. That night, Marco looked at the blueprints again. He saw Steve's signature on the final proposal. Steve was pushing for a cheaper foundation to save money. He was choosing profit over safety. If Steve won, the bridge would be a disaster. But if Marco spoke, Steve would use his perfect English to make Marco look like a fool. Steve would correct Marco's grammar in front of the boss. He would use jokes to hide Marco's truth. Marco felt like he was drowning. He had the truth in his hands, but the villain had the microphone. He realized that if he stayed silent, he was helping the villain. His silence was making him Steve's partner in a crime. He needed a weapon. He needed a secret power to fight back against the perfect English of a man who knew nothing. But where do you find a weapon when you feel like you have no voice? The answer was waiting for him in a place he never expected, under the shade of an old oak tree. The park was quiet, filled only with the sound of autumn leaves dancing on the pavement. Marco sat on a wooden bench, his head in his hands. He felt like a broken machine. "You look like a man who is carrying the weight of a whole bridge on his shoulders." A voice, dry and calm, came from the end of the bench. Marco looked up. It was an old man, perhaps 80 years old. He was wearing a faded coat and a small, friendly smile. Beside him was a chessboard, but he was not playing. He was just watching the world move. "I am an engineer," Marco said, his voice cracking. "But I am an engineer who cannot speak. I have a secret that can save lives, but I am too afraid of my English to tell it." The old man, whose name was Elias, did not laugh. He did not look at Marco with pity. He looked at him with understanding. "I was a teacher for 40 years, Elias said. I taught students from all over the world. Do you know what their biggest mistake was? They wanted to be poets before they were communicators. They wanted to be perfect, so they chose to be silent." Elias reached into his coat and pulled out a small black notebook. It was cheap and simple. "This is your weapon, Marco," Elias said, handing it to him. Marco looked at the empty pages. "A notebook? I have a computer. I have blueprints. How can this help me?" Elias leaned closer. His voice was a whisper, but it was powerful. "The secret is not in the words you don't have. The secret is in the truth you do have. Stop trying to speak like Steve. Steve is a salesman. You are a builder. Go home. Open this notebook. Write down your truth in 3 simple sentences. Only 3. No big words. No complex grammar. Use the English of a child, but the logic of a master. If the bridge is weak, say, the bridge is weak. If the soil is soft, say, the soil is soft." The truth does not need an accent, Marco. It only needs to be heard. Marco held the notebook. It felt heavy, like a real tool. "But they will laugh at my simple English," Marco said. Elias shook his head. In a room full of people talking about nothing, the man who speaks the simple truth is the most powerful person in the room. Your broken English is not a weakness. It is a filter. It forces you to say only what is important. Go. Write. Be simple. Be brave. Marco walked home that night, holding the notebook against his chest. For the first time in months, the fog in his head started to clear. He didn't need to learn 1,000 new words tonight. He didn't need to master the present perfect continuous. He only needed to be honest. He sat at his kitchen table and opened the black notebook. He looked at the blueprints of the West Side Bridge. He thought about the soft soil. He thought about the weak foundation. He picked up his pen. His hand was steady. He was no longer looking for perfect words. He was looking for true words. and as he began to write, he felt a strange new power growing inside him. The silent engineer was preparing for a battle, and his weapon was the simplest English in the world. But writing the truth was the easy part. The hard part was standing up in a room full of shadows and finding the courage to open his mouth. Tomorrow was the final meeting, and Marco knew that Steve was ready to close the deal. The final meeting room was cold, smelling of stale coffee and expensive leather. At the head of the table sat Mr. Henderson, looking at his watch. Steve was already standing by the projector, his shadow long and confident on the wall. Today, Steve began, his voice smooth like silk. We finalized the West Side Bridge. It is a masterpiece of modern design. It is cheap, it is fast, it is perfect. Marco felt a small black notebook in his pocket. It felt like a piece of hot coal against his leg. His heart was not just beating, it was screaming. He looked at the screen. Steve was showing a slide about cost reduction. Steve's English was beautiful. He used metaphors, he told a joke. Everyone laughed. Everyone nodded. Mr. Henderson picked up his pen to sign the final approval. Now or never. Marco's chair made a loud scratching sound as he pushed it back. Every head in the room turned. Steve stopped talking. He looked at Marco with a smile that was actually a warning. "Do you have a question, Marco? Or do you need more data entry?" Steve asked. A few people chuckled. Marco did not look at Steve. He looked at Mr. Henderson. He stood up. His legs felt like they were made of water, but he forced them to be still. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the black notebook. He opened the first page. He did not look for a complex introduction. He did not say, "I would like to express my humble opinion regarding the structural integrity." Instead, he spoke the words he had practiced in the kitchen. "Please, stop." The room went silent. "The bridge is not perfect," Marco said. His voice was shaky and his accent was heavy. He said bridge like bridge. He saw Steve roll his eyes. "Marco, we don't have time for a grammar lesson," Steve snapped. But Marco continued. He looked at his notebook. "The soil at West Side is soft. It is like sponge. The foundation in this design is 12 meters. It needs to be 18 meters. If we build this, the bridge will move. In 5 years, the concrete will break. In 10 years, the bridge will fall." Steve stepped forward, his face red. "This is nonsense. My team checked the numbers." "Marco, your English is so poor, you probably misread the report." Steve looked at the boss. "Sir, Marco is a hard worker, but he is confused. He doesn't understand the nuance of the American soil reports." Marco felt the shame trying to pull him down again. He felt the silent engineer wanting to sit back down and disappear. But then he remembered Elias. The truth does not need an accent. Marco didn't use a big word to fight Steve. He walked to the whiteboard. He picked up a red marker. He drew a simple picture of the bridge and the soft soil. He wrote 3 numbers, 12 meters, 18 meters, and 5 years. "Numbers are not English," Marco said, looking Steve in the eye. "Gravity is not English. Physics is the same in my country and your country. My grammar is broken. But the bridge must not be broken." Mr. Henderson stood up. He walked to the board. He looked at Steve's beautiful slides. Then he looked at Marco's red numbers. He was a man of facts, and for the first time, he was really looking at Marco. He wasn't hearing the accent anymore. He was seeing the expertise. "Steve," the boss said quietly, "sit down." The next 10 minutes were the longest of Marco's life. Mr. Henderson called a senior geologist on his cell phone. The room was so quiet, you could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Marco stood by the board, holding his cheap notebook like a shield. He was sweating. He was tired. But for the first time in a year, he was standing tall. He was no longer a ghost in the machine. Mr. Henderson put his phone down. The screen of his phone was still glowing in the quiet room. He looked at Steve. Then he looked at Marco. "The senior geologist agrees with Marco," the boss said. "The soil reports from Steve's team were incomplete. If we build that bridge today, it would be a disaster in 10 years. Marco, you saved this company. More importantly, you saved lives." Steve's face was no longer red. It was pale. For the first time, he had no big words. He had no jokes. He sat down and stared at his expensive laptop. The golden boy was suddenly very quiet. But Marco didn't feel like a hero in a movie. He felt a deep, quiet peace. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to use the future perfect or subjunctive mood. His simple English, his broken English, had carried the truth, and the truth was enough. The meeting ended, but the atmosphere in the office changed forever. As the other engineers walked out, They didn't pass by Marco like he was a ghost. One senior engineer, a man who never spoke to Marco before, stopped. He put a hand on Marco's shoulder. "Good catch, Marco. I want to see your notes on the seismic data tomorrow. Can we have lunch and talk about it?" Marco smiled. "Yes, I have many notes. My English is slow, but my math is fast." The engineer laughed. "I don't care about your English, Marco. I care about your brain." That evening, Marco didn't feel the burning shame in his chest. He walked past the coffee shop and saw Elias, the old teacher. Elias was still sitting on the same bench. Marco didn't say much. He just showed the old man the red marker stains on his hands. Elias nodded and smiled. "You didn't need a miracle, did you, Marco? You only needed to stop being a poet and start being yourself." When Marco arrived home, his wife saw the change immediately. His shoulders were not heavy anymore. He was standing tall, like the man in the photograph. "Did you have a good day?" she asked. "I had a loud day," Marco said. "I didn't speak perfectly. I made 10 mistakes in 1 minute, but they listened. They finally listened." 2 weeks later, Mr. Henderson called Marco into his office. He didn't ask Marco to do data entry. He put a new project on the desk, a complex skyscraper in a city center. "I want you to lead the structural team, Marco. Steve will work under you. He can do the fancy slides, but I want you to be the soul of the project. I want the truth of your engineering." Marco looked at the new blueprints. He felt the fire of creation returning to his heart. He was no longer the silent engineer. He was an immigrant. He had an accent. He struggled with verbs. But he was a leader again. He realized that his value was never lost. It was only waiting for his courage to speak. The bridge of silence was finally broken. And on the other side, Marco found his life again. But his journey was not just for himself. He knew there were thousands of others like him. Lions in cages, experts in shadows. And he knew exactly what he wanted to say to them. Marco stood by the large office window, looking at the city lights. The same lights that once looked like cold, distant stars. But now, they look like opportunities. He picked up the small black notebook from his desk. The pages were no longer empty. They were filled with simple sentences, red numbers, and bold ideas. Marco realized that this notebook was more than paper. It was his bridge back to himself. He thought about all the people like him, the doctors who are working as cleaners, the teachers who are silent in the supermarket, the engineers who are afraid of a meeting. "We are not invisible," Marco whispered to the quiet room. "We are only waiting." The first lesson Marco learned was this: your expertise is a diamond. Your English is just the box. If the box is simple or a bit broken, the diamond is still a diamond. Do not let a simple box make you feel cheap. People need your diamond. They don't care about the box. The second lesson was about the poet trap. Do not wait to speak like a poet. A poet uses many words to say one thing. An expert uses one word to change everything. If you can say the bridge is weak, you are already a genius in that moment. Simple English is not bad English. Simple English is efficient English. It is the English of action. The third and final lesson was about courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. Marco's legs were shaking. His heart was screaming. Courage is doing the work while your legs are shaking. It is opening your mouth when your brain is telling you to stay quiet. Every time you speak, the invisible wall becomes smaller. Every time you say, "I have an idea," you break a bar of your cage. Marco looked at the camera, as if he could see you. "I am still an immigrant," he said with a proud smile. "I still say he go instead of he goes sometimes. I still have a heavy accent that sounds like my home. But I am no longer a silent engineer. I am a builder. And I know that my voice, my simple, broken, honest voice, is the most powerful tool I own. If I can do it, you can do it too. Do not wait for perfection. Perfection is a ghost. The world is waiting for your ideas. The world is waiting for your expertise. So tomorrow, when you go to work, don't look for the big words. Look for the truth. Open your mouth and let the world hear the lion roar again. Marco's story is not just about a bridge. It is about the bridge inside your mind. Many of you watching this are just like Marco. You are experts, you are hardworking, you are brilliant, but you are living in the shadows because of a language. Let's look at 3 hard truths we must learn today. First, English is a tool, not an IQ test. In the office, Steve sounded smart because his English was fast. But his math was wrong. Marco sounded simple because his English was slow. but his math was right. Do not confuse fluency with intelligence. If you can build a house, heal a patient, or fix a machine, you are smart, period. Your broken English does not change your high IQ. Second, the poet trap is your biggest enemy. Why did Marco stay silent for a year? Because he wanted to speak perfectly. He wanted to be a poet. But in the real world, done is better than perfect. A simple sentence that people understand is 100 times better than a perfect sentence that you never say. Stop trying to impress people with your grammar. Start helping people with your expertise. Third, your silence is not humble, it is dangerous. If Marco stayed quiet, the bridge would fall. If you stay quiet in your job, your company loses your best ideas. Your family loses your potential promotion. And you lose your soul, bit by bit. Being quiet is not playing it safe. Being quiet is letting the Steve of the world take your place. Look at your hands. They have the power to create. Look at your brain. It has the power to solve. Don't let a few missing verbs stop you from being a leader. You are not here to be a ghost. You are here to build. Now, look at me. I don't want you to just watch this video and go to sleep. I want you to pick up your own black notebook today. The silent engineer in you must end now. I have a small challenge for you. Think about one thing you know perfectly in your job. It can be a machine, a process, or a solution. Now, write it down in only 3 simple English words. For example, the engine works, or safety is first. Write your 3 words in the comments below. Do not worry about your grammar. Do not worry about being a poet. Just show us your expertise. Let this comment section be the first room where you are no longer silent. If you feel this story is about you, please like this video. When you like it, YouTube shows it to other silent engineers around the world. You are helping a brother or a sister who is also struggling in the shadows. And if you want to find your voice again every single day, subscribe to Everyday Confidence English. We are the voice of the underdog. We don't teach you to be perfect. We teach you to be heard. Fill in this sentence in the comments to start. I am an expert in blank and I am ready to speak. Go ahead, write it now. Your expertise is waiting for your voice. Take a deep breath. Right now, in this moment, you are enough. The journey to a new country is hard. The journey to a new language is harder. But remember Marco's red numbers on the board. They were not perfect English, but they were the truth. Your value is not something you have to find. Your value is something you already have. You are the engineer who knows the soil. You are the mother who protects her children. You are the professional who survived the move. An accent is just the music of your history. Broken grammar is just the evidence of your courage to try. Tonight, when you go to sleep, tell yourself this. My ideas are more important than my mistakes. My expertise is more powerful than my silence. Tomorrow is a new day. The meeting room will be there. The boss will be there. The Steves of the world will be there. But you will not be the same. You will have your black notebook. You will have your simple truth. And you will have your voice. You have the power to change your life, one simple word at a time. Your value is decided by you, not by a dictionary. I believe in you. Everyday Confidence English believes in you. The world is waiting for your roar. Sleep well, my friend. And I will see you tomorrow in a better version of yourself. Good night!